And of course, in the upper left here, in the blue for the Shopify Rebellion, looking to maintain some of that form that took down Raynor. His name is Harstem.
And his opponent coming in with a 15-15 and Eric opener. It is the young up-and-coming player, YoungYakov. And I did just look it up. It was, in fact, 1 week before the patch officially released. And I just want to make sure that it wasn't... No, it was played on the old patch because I do know that Wardy has run a couple of balance test mod tournaments. This was not one of them, so it is in fact on the old patch. Harstem, he is definitely the kind of player that is going to know how to take advantage of, you know, some of the changes in the recent ZVP.
Yeah, certainly. And if you talk about that, honestly, seeing Harstem beat Raynor on the previous patch is maybe even more impressive than winning on this patch. Yeah, certainly. The changes in ZVP weren't that big, but the big one was that, well, Banelings now, even with +2, they 2-shot probes. They don't 1-shot probes. And a player like Raynor, who is so good at that multi-prong, at just playing fast and getting run-bys all over the place, he is one of the players that more than, say, I'm trying to think of a good example, more than, say, maybe Lambo or someone, really takes advantage of those harassing, aggressive options. So if you can beat him in that setup, then we're good. You know, that's even more impressive.
Oh, I should clarify that he lost to YoungYakov on the old patch. He beat Raynor on the new patch.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yeah. So yeah, just I realized I kind of crossed wires up there. Didn't want to didn't want to lead you too far astray. But as you know, as we're talking about this, it's like, oh man, talk about the game. Well, there's not a whole lot to talk about. Delayed warp gate. We've got the Stargate. This is as standard gets. Besides, of course, YoungYakov doing that 15-15, but I would say that's become a standard of its own. You prevent the hatch block, and it's just, well, it's a nice way to set yourself up.
You know, Steadfast, you say that. I think there are players for whom it has become standard, but yes. I wouldn't go so far as to say that 15-15 in this matchup is standard yet. It's nice. It means you get your hatchery on your natural, almost guaranteed. You have to go very early with the probe, but even still on some maps, you're not going to get the block off. But you do slow yourself down in other ways a little bit. You lose a little money off the cancel, and there are players that are very happy to, take the third base, be a little bit slowed down by getting hatch blocked, but everything else lining up really nicely. But for now, 2 adepts are going to try to shade into the mineral line here, and with Lings on top, well, it's only 4 Lings. That's not a ton. But it looks like Harstem, he's not going to commit.
Yeah, you never want to just dive in blindly and assume that there's only 4 Lings, and you know, then your adepts get caught. You lose all your map control. It can get messy pretty quickly. We are going to see the Oracle coming on in. I wonder if Harstem will shade forward with the adepts now, but it looks like not going to be the case. Did Harstem get the scout on the very quick layer is my question. The answer is no. He actually just barely missed it. I am surprised that he wasn't able to see that. I'm wondering if this is going to be a very fast Spire. No, it's going to be super quick Hydras. Okay, we talked about the patch. That is one thing that was significantly changed, is the speed of the Hydra upgrades.
That is true. Although, again, it could have been worse. For a moment on the initial version of that patch, we were looking at... So the Hydra, the upgrades, each room now moved to 71 seconds, I think it is, to upgrade, which is faster than it was. But the initial version... Sorry?
It's even faster than that. The Hydra range is, I think, 50 seconds. Combined, it's not as fast as when they were combined, like when you combine the times, but it is a lot faster than it used to be.
Yeah, so again, the point is they combined them, they made them cheaper and made it faster, and it was just ridiculous. That being said, you're right, though. There are some really powerful timings available. Hydra speed now going to be on the way. And a lot of these Hydra builds, Steadfast, they time out really nicely against the Stargate into Blink Stalker type of idea, because Stalkers, they're great against early game units from the Zerg. They trade tremendously well against Roaches, with some stasis traps with Lings off creep they can do fairly nicely, but Ling Hydra against this, it shreds Stalkers.
That it does, and we don't see a very quick charge. It will, in fact, be that blink charge. It's just a little bit faster, and of course, going to be a little bit more powerful against the Hydras if you can close the distance. But YoungYakov, he's setting up for this. He's shown the Hydras, and now he starts up a ton more drones. He's got an Evo chamber behind this. This is not going to be some ultra dedicated 55 drone Hydra Ling all in, but it still could be just a little bit more. Well, actually, hang on. No, he's still on 5 gases. He's just now taking them. This could still be that very dedicated attack. Although it's going to hit a little bit later if it does, because he's got that +1 missile on the way. He starts up the infestation pit now. YoungYakov is really trying to throw Harstem curveballs, but Harstem being very active with these oracles. He got a couple of pickoffs earlier. He's going to scout the infestation pit. That is some really good information, because now it's going to allow him to continue his own tech forward and not just get caught out over defending against an attack that may or may not even come.
So Steadfast, there's, one of the problems with curveballs is that if you're too young, you're too inexperienced, you tend to throw your arm out. And that is always an issue when we're talking about it. The Zerg player, or really anyone that's trying to be as tricky as YoungYakov is. You go back and forth and show aggression while you're droning behind. And if you're not careful, just by trying to just be crazy and mess with your opponent, you're going to put yourself behind. So YoungYakov, his port base only just now getting started. His drone count only at 61. His army supply isn't incredibly impressive either, although triggers the stasis traps very nicely there as he tries to get a little aggressive. And yeah, he's transitioning. There's a hive on the way, adding in that lurker den. But I wonder at what point we can say, hey, YoungYakov, you tried to do so many things and haven't done any of them, that you just kind of put yourself behind by not really committing to anything.
Yeah, we will see a little bit of a jump in the middle of the map. A couple of stalkers do get picked off, and Harstem, it's good that he's playing aggressive, but he's got to be a little bit more careful with his units if he is going to be so far forward onto creep. Obviously, you don't want to lose any units, but the tech of Harstem is looking pretty solid right now. We've got ourselves a couple Colossus on the way. However, YoungYakov is going to have lurkers, and they will be able to get those hive upgrades on the way pretty quickly. You did point out very nicely there that not all the creep was picked off by that revelation. So a little bit of kind of missing the crossing of the T's, the dotting of the I's, so to speak.
Kind of an awkward blink there as he tries to, I guess, trap the Lings and instead just lets them go on. But it's fine. Warpins are going to kill off the rest of this. So Harstem will get the Lings there. And now Harstem, you talk about the lurkers and having those upgrades at Festival. First of all, those upgrades, the hive is done. The upgrades haven't been started yet. Harstem has a timing right now before the Vipers have energy, before the lurkers are sufficiently on the field. We've got 5 of them again. No lurker range, no lurker speed. With this army from Harstem, it is just going to be better, but you have to be so careful because of the lurker spread right now. And with the Spore out front, it's hard to get vision on them. So Harstem, I guess, despite maybe having a slim timing before everything's properly ready, probably not going to go for it. Just hold the high ground for now.
He's got to wait for that extended thermal lance, because right now the lurkers still outrange the Colossus, and the Colossus obviously don't want to. It's great when the Colossus outrange the lurkers. You got 9 range against 8 ranged lurkers. That's fantastic. You just sit at range and you just pick away at them. But when your opponent has the range advantage, you just can't do too much with the Colossus. They're better if they're sieging. They don't want to be fighting straight up. But regardless, Harstem, he's not looking to overcommit. He's not looking to go too deep. He's clearing creep. He's adding on Storm. He's got a 2nd Forge and a 5th base. Disruptor tech also being added on. But YoungYakov, oh, look at that. He's going to find himself one of these disruptors here. That's a nice little pick off for the young Zerg. Oh, very aggressive blink forward into the lurkers, but there's nothing to really cover for them. Harstem, oh, that was very awkward. He ends up losing. I think he just lost all 3 oracles. Oh, that is a pretty big mistake right here. You talk about vision on the lurkers, and those oracles are crucial for that.
No, you really can't fight. Yes, technically observers exist, but it is not uncommon for a Zerg to have overseers, to have spores in front. And then the job of the remaining Hydras, their job is to target that observer down, make it impossible for the Protoss player to fight. So Harstem, without those oracles, I mean, his timing is done. He's moving into, we see the fleet beacon going down. He's moving into that next stage. But what I think is pretty cool here, and you have to be careful because it's very easy to throw these zealots away eventually. But he's got warp prisms. No, I'm sorry, that's observer speed on the way. So he should be at least have a little bit more control, maybe a little bit less worried about losing observers to an overseer or something like that. But it's still, again, fighting with observers to get your detection is not the easiest thing in this setup.
No, not so much, especially when you're attacking into the Zerg. Now, YoungYakov, we talked about the range on the lurkers. He just never added it.
Yeah.
He never added it at all. He went up to the adaptive talons, which is great for the burrow speed, but you need the range if you're going to fight a Colossus-based army, and just in general, you need the range. We do see Harstem trying to mix it up with a couple of Zealot run-bys. There was a Disruptor that was abducted before, but this is a lot of Zealots on the left side. There are some well-placed spines, and that's going to buy enough time for YoungYakov to deal with this. Harstem, meanwhile, in the middle of the map, he will be able to deal with this small contingent of YoungYakov. And that's going to be a pretty good cleanup, I would say, for Harstem. We're in a bit of a weird game state right now where they're both ready kind of to advance their tech a little bit further. Like, we've got the Fleet Beacon. We're just actually, never mind. We're just going to see the Mothership and 4 Robos. Okay, so you talk about advancing the tech. This is something that is kind of enabled by the new patch a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is not something we would have seen a month ago. Certainly not. And of course, when we talk about the Mothership, it's important to point out what's changed. It no longer has energy. It's now everything has a cooldown. It's a little bit smaller. It's a little bit faster. It's a little bit cheaper. Those high... If we had lurker range, it'd be a problem, but we don't have lurker range, so it's fine. And on top of that, well, again, it's faster, it's cheaper, it moves around a little bit better, and it really does seem to be designed about playing a lot more aggressively. Now these lurkers, they're going to get caught up by their lonesome steadfast.
Yeah, they are. The High Templar are so low in HP, but they all survive in the orange. And a lot of lurkers end up going down. That could have been very bad for Harstem. Could have lost a lot of high-value spellcasters. We see these Baneleys trying to come in on the right side. And the lack of the... Well, I mean, they don't have +2 melee anyways, but they, YoungYakov could have prioritized that. We can see the patch having a profound effect. Meanwhile, Warpin in the main base is going to get up and rolling. Looks like this is going to become a big problem here for YoungYakov. Going to draw a lot of Lings out of position. Harstem may try and move forward during all this, but it looks like the Lings and Hydras aren't going to be enough to deal with that.
Yeah, for now, we got 3 Colossus, a couple of Mortals, so many potential storms. Feedback, beautiful on those Vipers now. And maybe this is going to be Harstem's timing a little bit. He's going to get some drones randomly on the map. That's always rather nice. And now the Warp Prism, with that speed, is going to find its way into the main base once again. More Warp-ins here. We do have to point out, though, that Harstem is committed to shield, not to armor, so it helps his Stalkers really nice. He helps anything in the sky. Not quite as good for the Zealots, as now he's going to punch through a ton of spines. With the Lurkers right there, you do have to stay at range at the moment, and really, Steadfast, this is just a delaying action. The Zealots in the main base, 21 dead drones, and it's a base as well. Harstem hitting on both sides right now.
Yeah, he's doing a phenomenal job right there. By the way, you talked about the shields. The Observer actually survived because it had the shield upgrade against the Spore Crawler. It survived with 2 HP because of the additional armor he had on that shield upgrade. So kind of a handy effect right there. Meanwhile, a little counterattack on the top right side was, it looks like, deflected by just, well, there's just a lot of static defense here. Meanwhile, Harstem, I mean, he is cruising right now in this game. Both players do not have a big bank, but it is Harstem who is going to be outmining his opponent by a significant amount right now.
That is, but I mean, that's a lot of Hydras, a lot of Lurkers. If you get the right fight, it can be scary, but there are
but it's Storm Colossus.
There are so many storms. We're looking at like 10 High Templar right now. That is hard to deal with. And Yakov, we're running into the situation. He's got a ton of gas. He's got 3,000 gas almost, but does not have a lot of minerals. So any sort of tech transition is going to be hard. And it seems like his transition is no transition at all. Not really. He's adding 2 Nidus networks for that counterattack, for the ability to maybe find its way into the main base. But I don't think Harstem gives him that time.
I don't know that he does, but one thing that is missing as well is still that lurker range. We are going to see some storms on the right side really hitting those Hydras hard. Nice abducts on a couple of power units, grabbing an Immortal, an Archon, and a Colossi there, but Harstem now kind of has position on this base a little bit. The Immortals, they are going to stand strong. There's the Mothership's cloaking field being activated manually. No detection for a little bit. Finally does show up for YoungYakov, but there is just so much firepower in this Protoss army. The Storms, the Immortals, the Colossus. Harstem crushing through with that powerful Protoss army, and we'll take game number 1.
Dude, that was a cool game. It's not often that we get to see, okay, so sure, Cyclones, they're showing up in a lot of games right now, but in this matchup in particular, I haven't seen a lot of games that are, you can look at it and say, wow, this game would be very, very different if this was a month ago. This would be very different before the patch, because we saw the quad robo, we saw the mothership pop out as it did, we saw, well, Banelings not kill as much as they should have, although again, it was still only +1 when that happened. And I think the coolest thing about this mothership change, by the way, is a little bit, it's a small one. So previously, the mothership would just cloak, right? Everything under it would cloak. Now it's an activatable ability. And it's one of those things where, because it's not on all the time, it's easy to forget that it can do it. It's easy to, for a second there, not have your detection forward, not worry about it. And we saw that the cloak timing, that when it was a perma-cloak, didn't always make a big difference. It kept Cry Templar alive in the ball, but not in these timings. All of a sudden, we saw Harstem. He triggers the cloak. He ends the game because there was not an overseer properly in the right location, because this is a change and because this is new. So, I don't know. That just, it's pretty cool when you see a change make an immediate impact in a game.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But I think the bigger impact is forgetting Seismic Spines.
Yes.
Forgetting that massive upgrade. It is, well, it's an oversight that at this level you just can't afford. And Harstem does a great job, punishes that, and now finds himself one map away from advancing. YoungYakov, he's shown a little bit of nerves. He's going to have to tidy things up for the next game.
That he will, but his opponent in the bottom right playing around with all the new units, all the new changes. For the Rebellion, up 1, it's Harstem.
And his opponent spawning up at the top left, it is the red Zerg player, YoungYakov. For Twisted Minds.
And you know, I gotta say, Twisted Minds, they've had some pretty solid pickups, right? They pick up Classic in the game right before Gamers 8. He goes and he takes down Serral, and I think if he gets anyone not Cure, he makes a much deeper run in the playoffs. They picked up YoungYakov, who has actually had a pretty solid season this year. In general, they're doing a really good job of picking up established talent that can go higher, but also, you know, younger players, newer players that also have maybe a little bit more of a ceiling than have a pretty solid ceiling.
Oh, I mean, I've seen some of YoungYakov's ZVTs, and I will tell you that his ceiling is huge. Now, I'm not going to say that he would have won that game if he'd built Lurker range, but it would have been a drastically different game. I don't think Harstem would have been able to make some of the attacks necessarily that they wouldn't have gone as well as they had, and then maybe he's not able to break through as effectively. YoungYakov still fought a pretty darn good game without an extremely critical upgrade. Once again, I'm not going to say that he'll win the game, but it's very interesting. I really kind of wish that he hadn't forgotten the upgrade so we could see what that 4 robo quick mothership style kind of looks like played out over the course of, 3, 4, 5 minutes. Let's say Harstem loses 6, 8 immortals in a big fight, something goes really wrong, but then he just replenishes them in a matter of like a minute and a half. Like that's a really interesting concept to me, and I'm excited to see more of it in the future. So I'm just excited about what Harstem's doing to this matchup.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny, you talked about things as well. And when I was talking to players about these changes that we got and the balance changes that we got in the last patch, and one of the arguments was that, okay, so Zerg will go to Sky Zerg not because Protoss forces them there, right? Or not because Protoss goes Sky Toss, because they can't deal with the Zerg ground. In fact, it's kind of the other way around, where this Zerg or this Protoss ground army of Colossus and Disruptor and Storm and maybe a couple of Immortals eventually becomes impossible for the Zerg to fight on the ground. That's why they go Broodlords. That's why that is as it is. And we kind of saw that right there, right? We saw Yakov. Maybe Lurker range would have made a difference, but that army was just so powerful for Harstem, where I kind of wish, even if he had that Lurker range, I would have he had the gas for it. I would really have liked to start to see some sort of Broodlord transition. Because, I mean, when you have Steadfast, when you have 3 Colossus, and you have 4 or 5 Immortals, and you have all these Archons, tell me, what exactly does that do against a bunch of Broodlords?
It doesn't do too much, but ultimately, You know, Broodlords are expensive. They are still siege breaker units. They're still, while they are a lot faster physically than they used to be, they did take a hit in terms of their actual fighting prowess. So it's a little bit interesting. Now, we did see YoungYakov. He got in kind of a Dark-esque Ling slipping past at a funny timing, which, you know, that's really nice to find out. Ooh, very quick layer coming in at the natural. Okay, my gut tells me this is going to be Ling Queen Nidus, but we will see in a little bit if that is what YoungYakov has planned. There are drones going down on the other side of the map, but we're going to see a cancel on the third base. No, it's a kill. Oh, that's big. 6-7 drones do go down. This is a lot of damage coming in from both sides. I'm not sure who I like that for more. Initially, my instinct says Harstem, but losing that third base is really painful for the Protoss. I mean, he actually might lose a hell of a lot more.
On the flip side, though, Steadfast, if this is, of course, Yakov was scouted, so maybe he changes his mind. But if this was Hydroling Queen, the fact that you are not even trying to defend your third base is kind of a suit. Granted, it would have been much better if it was a cancel, not a kill. But it's kind of almost a pseudo buff to the Protoss, right? Because you have less positions to defend. You're actually maybe able to defend things a little bit easier. That being said, though, Yakov, he's got his lair done, but we don't see any tech popping out of it until right now. It's going to be a Hydrogen going down, adding on that gas. So any sort of, hey, actually only defending 2 bases against Hydroling Queen might, or against Ling Queen might be better. Well, that's just not what's happening this game.
Yeah, and I think if he hadn't gotten a kill on that Nexus and knew that he, you know, set his opponent's economy back so much, maybe he does go for something a little bit more aggressive with that Nidus Worm play. But he had already built the second gas after he killed that third base. And he's decided that even though he took some damage, he can macro out of this. And yeah, he's in a comfy position, I think. Harstem just now getting his third base reestablished. He's built a lot of probes, which is great, but he's not going to be able to take advantage of them for a while. And as a result, YoungYakov, he's going to find himself ahead economically. And hey, he's going to be able to pick off a couple of probes as well. Doing a great job with these Lings so far. Yeah, YoungYakov is really up in Harstem's business in this game number 2, but Harstem counterattacking with the Oracles, doing some good work there. Still, I like YoungYakov's position at the moment.
Steadfast, I got a question for you. You talk about he's being up in his business. What would it take for him to be up in his business as well?
Well, you know, it's business is actually the evolution of business. So he was up in his business first, and then he got up in his business.
Makes sense.
It's a complicated thing. Like language, you know how it evolves over time. This is one of those evolutions.
Exactly. I mean, that's why no one can pronounce Alcyone properly, as Lings are going to get on top of these Stalkers. But Steadfast, this is not a big army right here. It's 4 Hydras, a couple Lings, and I mean, the Stasis Trap isn't going to get all that much, but this pressure from Harstem right now is doing a really nice job of, well, forcing units that YoungYakov doesn't want to make. And the Queens, they're off creep. They can't transfuse. Harstem looks on top of the Hydras as well. And you were talking about how this game was feeling really solid for a young Zerg friend. All of a sudden, this Stalker pressure, it's doing so much.
Yeah, it is just 4 gateways, so there shouldn't be any potential to actually end the game unless YoungYakov makes a big mistake. But he is supply blocked at 98, and that is the kind of mistake that can really leave you open. Harstem, as long as he doesn't overcommit right here, this is a great little play from him. I think he's got to be really careful, though, about going too far. He will be able to pick off 2 more Overlords, and that does kind of resupply block YoungYakov a little bit. This is very effective from Harstem. He lost 3 Stalkers for a lot of stuff on the side of YoungYakov. This was a very effective attack, and he's teching behind it. His robotics bay is done right now. This is exactly what Harstem needed to reassert himself back in this game.
That it is. Now, we do have to point out that Yakov behind this is playing rather tech greedy. He's got his hive just about done. There's a lurker den on the way, +2 attack on the way. Yakov isn't trying to go get aggressive here necessarily. He really is trying to get himself into that lurker, Hydra, Ling type of setup, get some Vipers as well. And if he can get to that without Harstem getting too much damage done, and if he remembers lurker range, that's really important. His army that he's making is going to be pretty solid for a while. Harstem, Is he on double? He's only on single robo right now, so he's not building the Colossus count that he wanted, that he had last game easily. Only just now are his additional gateways completing. So again, if Yakov survives this pressure that Harstem's putting on, his tech is going to be in a beautiful spot.
Yeah, this feels kind of heavily committed from Harstem behind this, even though he's playing very... This is like how Polt used to play TVZ, just staying off creep and poking at your opponent. Oh, as I say that, he does lose one stalker. Okay, no, it's not too big of a deal. But it feels like such an establishment style of like, I'm the one who gets map control. I'm the one who gets to dictate the pace and the flow. We do have a little Ling counterattack from YoungYakov. He scouted the 4th base instantly, and he's going to be able to get a cancel on this almost for sure. This is a great little counterattack. Oh, is that warp in going to go through? Oh, he turns it into a slow warp pylon, but Lings will still get pushed back over. He achieved his objective, turned off the 4th base. This is... Now that the lurkers are out, there is a little bit of stabilization, but ooh, Harstem doesn't want to let him stabilize. He's going to get a warp into the main base and really trying to create the chaos here. YoungYakov, oh, nice job with the Spore Crawler. Able to get that warp prism. Still 10 drones go down. This is still a problem. Supplies are favoring Harstem. And a nice little recall out to save those zealots. Good job.
And behind this Harstem, he's not going up to 4 robo just yet. He's only on 3 bases, so can't quite afford it, but he added in 2 more robos, so it's going to be 2 disruptors at a time. On top of that, Colossus, as he's really looking for this timing. But, okay, so here's the question, right? We have Hive, but I guess Yakov, yeah, he doesn't have the gas necessarily, not yet. He doesn't feel comfortable. Lurkers would do so well against what Harstem's... Oh, look at that stasis! Harstem, now are you going to take advantage of this one? You know what's happening. This army is vulnerable. But I guess the 2 lurkers are going to scare him off right now. He doesn't have his army together. This would have been such a beautiful timing for Harstem to punish. And instead, he's going to use it to knock some rocks down. Yakov, he's going to survive what realistically Steadfast would have been a terrifying moment.
It was a very scary moment, but Harstem didn't know exactly what was behind it. You never want to blink forward into even 4 sieged up lurkers with +2 missile. We are going to see YoungYakov. He'll be able to get his units back in position and will start to drive this back. There are 3 Colossus with this army, but they're only the +1 Colossus. Stalkers as well. YoungYakov doing a good job of dealing with these Zealot run-bys. Harstem is so good at these Zealot run-bys, but YoungYakov answering pretty much everything. Harstem has thrown a lot at him. Not quite enough Hydras on this left side, so that will actually mean this very small contingent of Harstem able to get some good trades, but YoungYakov is keeping himself from being broken. He's staying on his 4 bases, and he has added on a Viper. So I'm really impressed with YoungYakov's ability to hold this very difficult to deal with pressure.
And man, Steadfast, if this is the type of ZVP we're going to get after the patch, I was critical of it, but I was very critical of, well, I guess not the ZVP changes, but this ground to Protoss focus against Hydraling Lurker, dynamic all over the map. I mean, we're starting to get some pretty good games. Disruptor is going to fall down here, and now with this Viper as well, looking for the Abduct, knocking that one down, but actually nothing's burrowed. So you're going to trade instead. A Lurker for Disruptor. Yakov, though, trying to find this timing. Again, more Abduct. Stalkers blink forward on top of the Viper. Beautiful move, but you can't stay too far forward because, again, Steadfast, those Lurkers, this time with range, they make it so hard for any armored unit to fight. And Stalkers, well, they're armored units.
Yeah, that they are, and they got their +2 missile as well, so they really do hit like a truck. The Disruptor count, though, is so high, and with that one Viper going down, YoungYakov right now is a little bit on the back foot. Harstem is going fishing with those Disruptors. He's going to find himself a Lurker, and with the Revelations, able to really keep tabs on his opponent's army. And now we see that Zealot run by on the left side. A big clump of Zealots going to come on in. If he just clicks that hatchery, he can kill it almost instantly. Lings are going to get back over. They will distract a little bit. And actually, the Zealots, they're just going to win the fight very hard. And they're gonna kill that hatchery basically on its own. Meanwhile, the main army pushing forward. Harstem, way ahead in supply, is absolutely crushing through YoungYakov. YoungYakov is holding so well for a while. Disruptors smashing the drones. And Harstem, the captain, smashes through with the